But let's move on to the next Canadian team on the list, coming in at 19th place, Les Habitants de Montreal. And the Habs are a fun one. And this is the one too. Like, it's too bad he doesn't have a model for goalies, because like I'd love to see what he thinks about Carey Price, because like that would have made our podcast. Like, that would have been 8,000 comments. We could talk for an hour on the value of Carey Price and wins above replacement, losses. When do people would say, oh, it's bullshit because the only wins that matter in the playoffs? And other people would say, well, you have to make the playoffs for those wins to matter, and he hasn't been the greatest during the regular season. So I'm disappointed this time anyway that goalies weren't included. But this one jumped out at me a bit, Gallagher. And somewhat not shocked at the same time, because I know a lot of the metrics guys love Gallagher. Like, Gallagher's 5-on-5 numbers are amazing. Like, I remember I think it was it over the last, I don't know how long, he had the same amount of 5-on-5 goals as like Crosby. Like Gallagher,
even if you go back over the last like 5 or 6 years, Gallagher is like, he's hovering around the top 10 in terms of like 5-on-5 goals. So I think that's why this model in particular ranks him out so good.
Yeah. And I think a lot of those guys too, like people looking at us saying numbers before, like, this guy deserves 16 million, 17 million according to Dom's model. Well, to your point, Bruno, like, it's because these guys produce 5-on-5. It's like 5-on-5 points are more valuable than power play points, not necessarily on the scoreboard, but the gap of like what it takes from like a player who can't produce 5-on-5 to who can, compared to say the power play. Like, a lot of guys can produce on the power play. Not a lot of guys can produce 5-on-5.
Exactly. Yeah, that at the end of the day, that really just shows how good you are as a player, because that's when the playing field is even. No team is at an advantage or a disadvantage. How can you produce when all things are even and it's 5-on-5 hockey, right? And Brendan Gallagher, like you said, the analytics community loves this guy because he scores a lot of 5-on-5 goals. Simple as that.
Yeah. Next one, another one in the green for Montreal, not surprising at all, was from your Ottawa 67s, Tyler Toffoli at a $6.5 million surplus over 4 years. Not shocking at all. Toffoli's a great player. Contract. Everyone, it's not too often when a player signs a deal and everyone immediately is like, wow, that's a really good deal. Like, everyone knew that one was the gem for Montreal. So yeah, he values Toffoli about a $6 million player. So again, not shocking. We'll quickly like fly through the Reds for Montreal. There are some talking ones here, man. So Byron, he has him as a $3 million surplus over 2 years, him about a $2 million player. Newly signed Mike Hoffman at a $4 million surplus over 3 years. So he has him at about like a $3.2 million player. Armia, a $4.8 million surplus, but like divided over 4 years. So it's not the end of the world. He has him about like $2 million player, $2.5 million player. Jonathan Drouin, not shocking, $6.8 million surplus with 2 years left on his deal, makes him about a $2 million player in Dom's eyes. These are two good ones. And like Montreal Canadiens fans, like, let us have it. Let's tell us what you think about these ones. Josh Anderson. Okay. He has him at a $19 million surplus over the next 6 years of his deal. He is Anderson about a $2.5 million player. That sucks. I mean, if Dom's right, like, that sucks. And again, the model, make of it what you wish, but when you're a winger and you're making that much money, like, he doesn't get a lot of total points. So I'm sure that comes into play. And
yeah, and like, I even going through some of these negative contracts he talked about on the Habs, like, I have no problem with the Mike Hoffman contract. I think he's a good player. He scores a ton of goals. Exactly. He's really good on the power play. And maybe it's because his 5-on-5 numbers aren't as good. Like, Hoffman, you could essentially call him a power play specialist. Like, that guy can rip it on the man advantage. So I really have no problem with Hoffman's contract, even if it's a slight overpayment. Armia, I'm kind of in the same ballpark. Like, okay, he's not nearly the goal scorer that Mike Hoffman is, but I don't have too much of an issue paying Armia $3.4 million.
Yeah, like, and his overpay wasn't
overpayment, but it's not bad.
Yeah, again, it was 4.8 divided by 4. He has him as like $1 million overpay. Yeah, so whatever. Yeah,
but yeah, the Josh Anderson one, man, that's you know
what? People would argue with that one though. Like, people like him. I mean, he scored big goals in the playoffs. So,
but then he also went like multiple games without doing anything. Like, he finished.
He had a span in the regular season where he went like, I'm just throwing out a number. It was like 20 something games with like 2 assists or something.
Yeah.
Like,
when you just look at his like raw production, like, man, he scored 5 goals in 22 playoff games, 5 goals and 1 assist. So he had 6 points in 22 playoff games. Again, this model, these rankings have nothing to do with power.
Sorry, Bruno. He had 1 assist in the playoffs.
Yes. Josh Anderson, 1 assist in 22 playoff games.
That's like hard to do. And like, you're a winger.
And he had 7 assists in 52 regular season games.
Even his goals, like how many goals do you have in the regular season?
He had 17 goals in 52 games.
Yeah, but he had like 6 in his first like 8 games, or he had like 12. Like they're all at the beginning. Like he went on a flyer.
Was so inconsistent. So in total, last year out of Josh Anderson, you got 22 goals in 74 combined games, regular season playoffs, and that's fine. But yeah, when you're only getting 8 assists in 74 games, and you factor in how inconsistent he was last year, and you look at that contract, and I get it. He throws his weight around. He's an intimidating presence on the ice, but man, oh man, that's a lot of money to pay to a player. Like, for example, like he's getting Zach Hyman money, and Zach Hyman, he produces better than Josh Anderson. Say what you want about both players. Maybe you're an Anderson over Hyman guy, but just looking at the raw production, Hyman is a better point producer and goal scorer than Josh Anderson. He just is.
Yeah. No, it's that one to me. Like Anderson's a weird player. Like, it's not too often there's a guy who, like, I understand someone really liking him and I understand someone really hating him, but he kind of falls in that category for sure. This one, and Montreal Canadiens fans are not going to be happy about this one. David Savard. Dom has him at just under a $10 million overpay over the 4 years. He has Savard essentially like a league min guy, like just above league min guy. And like, they just signed him. And like, to your point before about like what happens when you win Stanley Cups, your name gets out there and people jump on you. But Dom does not like
why people like David Savard, right? Like, he's French Canadian. He's a right shot defenseman. They need someone to replace Shea Weber. So I get why, Habs fans are on board with this guy. And listen, like David Savard, I've watched this guy play, and you go back, maybe forget last year where I think the model is kind of, bringing down his value a little bit based on what he did last season, even though he won the Stanley Cup, obviously, with Tampa. But he's a guy that's been on the decline, but he's a solid player. Like, he blocks shots, he hits guys. Like, he's a good, solid defenseman. But yeah, I mean, based on this model, like, it's an overpayment, and it's just it's not a good contract. And say what you want about, David Savard, but just looking at the numbers over the next 4 years, it looks like the Habs probably could have done a little bit better here.
Yeah. To your point about like right-handed, right shooting defensemen, it'd be fun to look at all of how Dom scored all the right-handed defensemen. Like, are they all overpaid? Or are they all fair paid? Like, it'd be interesting to see if everyone goes nuts for right-handed.
Yeah, every right-handed defenseman this year is being valued like Connor McDavid. Like, it's actually like insane.
I tell my nephew, so like, he always wants to play center because he likes to score and all that, but he shoots right. He loves rushing the puck, and he has a Swedish last name because of the family. I'm like, but you're going to be a first round draft pick at $5 million. I'm like, man, just based on those right-handed defense, Swedish last name, first round draft pick, done. Never getting cut.
He's a lock to be a first round pick.
Yeah, guaranteed. And he does the Gretzky jersey talk. No influence on my end. No influence.
An absolute lock to go in the first round. Yeah. I can't wait, Lepore. When is he eligible? When is he draft eligible?
A decade. He just turned 9. So yeah.
Okay, well, watch out for that.
Yeah, watch out for him.